The documentary opens on a cold December evening in Lyon, France, where the sound of distant church bells merges with bustling holiday crowds. Inside a warmly lit apartment, the Leclerc family, Pierre, a stern corporate executive, Isabelle, a spirited former music teacher, and their two children, Luc and Amélie, gather around the dinner table as travel videos play on a tablet. A Filipino vlogger enthusiastically describes the emotional power of the Simbang Gabby Mass, the Philippines' dawn celebrations leading up to Christmas. Pierre smirks, tapping the screen dismissively, questioning how such an event could move people to tears. Isabelle raises an eyebrow, amused by her husband's cynicism, while the children laugh along, mimicking the vlogger's dramatic expressions. None of them realize that a series of unexpected events will soon place them thousands of kilometers away, in a tropical country whose culture, faith, and communal warmth will challenge everything they thought they understood about Christmas. The scene fades with the family's laughter echoing, unaware of the transformation awaiting them. 2 weeks later, Pierre receives a call from his company's headquarters in Singapore. Their Philippine branch is facing severe operational issues. Supplier delays, mismanaged accounts, and the potential collapse of a multi-million-euro partnership. As the regional emergency response consultant, Pierre is ordered to fly to Manila immediately and, because of the extended holiday timeline, bring his family along for a mandatory month-long stay. Isabelle is thrilled at the unexpected adventure, eager to expose their children to a different world, but Pierre grumbles about tropical humidity and chaotic city streets. Still, he agrees, eager to resolve the company's crisis. The children search online for things to do in Manila, stumbling across videos of Simbang Gabby again. Amélie jokes that they might finally witness this emotional Filipino mass people cry about. Pierre waves the thought off, insisting they would avoid crowded gatherings altogether. But destiny is patient and persistent, weaving connections long before people recognize them. As their flight date approaches, the family's excitement mixes with tension, setting the stage for a journey unlike any they've taken. The Leclercs land in Manila just after sunset. The airport hums with holiday energy. Families in reunions, OFWs returning home, baggage carousels overflowing with wrapped gifts. Warm air rushes into their faces as they walk outside, carrying with it the scent of roasted chestnuts, diesel, and Christmas lantern vendors shouting cheerfully. Their company driver, Joel, greets them with a polite bow and leads them to a van decorated with tiny parole lights hanging from the rearview mirror. As they drive toward Makati, the children stare at the skyline illuminated by both skyscraper lights and elaborate Christmas displays. Pierre, fatigued and irritable, scrolls through emails detailing the business problems awaiting him the following morning. Isabelle, sensing tension, asks Joel about the colorful star lanterns they see everywhere. He explains that paroles symbolize the Star of Bethlehem and the Filipino spirit of hope. His tone is gentle and proud. Amélie whispers to her brother that maybe Christmas here really means something different. Pierre's eyes stay glued to his phone, unwilling to be charmed. The next morning, Pierre rushes to the Manila office, leaving his family to settle into the hotel. As he meets with department heads, he quickly realizes the issues run deeper than disorganization. There are unpaid subcontractors, misplaced documents, and unresolved safety violations. Stress mounts as Pierre pushes his staff for answers. By midday, he storms out of a meeting, overwhelmed by the chaos. Meanwhile, Isabelle and the children explore the city. They visit a cafe where the barista proudly tells them about an upcoming Simbang Gabby Mass at a historic church nearby. She speaks with reverence, describing how the celebration unites entire communities. At the hotel later, Isabelle mentions it to Pierre, who scoffs at the idea of attending any mass at 4 a.m. Yet that night, unable to sleep from stress, He steps onto the balcony and listens to distant choir rehearsals drifting from local chapels. He dismisses the stirring feeling in his chest. The family, unaware, edges closer to an encounter that will shake their assumptions about faith and culture. Days pass and tensions rise. Pierre works nonstop, becoming short-tempered and distant. His staff tries to explain the cultural complexities shaping the delays, but he grows impatient, comparing everything unfavorably to European standards. At dinner one evening, Isabel gently suggests they join Joel's family for the first night of Simbang gabby. Pierre nearly laughs. "We don't need sentimental traditions. We need efficiency," he mutters. Luke, emboldened, jokes that maybe the Mass would help fix Dad's mood. Pierre glares, but Amelie bursts into laughter, easing the tension. Isabel insists that understanding the people might help him understand the work environment. Reluctantly, Pierre agrees to attend one Mass. "Purely observational," he says, emphasizing that he won't participate. The family prepares for the early morning call time, unaware that this decision marks the turning point in their journey. Outside their window, Manila continues glowing with Christmas energy, and choirs practice tirelessly, as though anticipating the arrival of guests who still doubt the magic awaiting them. At 3 a.m., the family wakes to the sound of bustling streets. Despite the hour, Manila feels alive. Vendors fry bibingka and puto bumbong beside makeshift lanterns casting warm golden light. The Leclercs arrive at the church, a 300-year-old stone structure surrounded by overflowing crowds. Pierre stands stiffly, irritated by the heat and humidity even before sunrise. Joel introduces them to his mother, a gentle elderly woman who beams at the sight of foreign visitors. She tells them that Simbang gabby is a promise kept to God, a tradition carried through hardship, colonization, and war. Her words, though simple, carry gravity. The Mass begins, and the choir's voices rise like a tide, harmonious and powerful. Pierre tries to remain detached, but he cannot ignore the reverence surrounding him. The congregation sings with a sincerity he rarely witnesses in France. As candles flicker, illuminating faces hopeful and weary alike, something inside Pierre stirs, something he quickly suppresses, refusing to be moved. Throughout the Mass, Pierre continually finds himself confronted with moments he cannot easily dismiss. A young man kneels beside him, eyes closed, whispering prayers for his father's recovery. In front of him, a mother carries her sleeping toddler, tears sliding down her cheeks as she sings. An elderly couple holds hands, their voices weak but full of devotion. The air vibrates with a shared longing, hope, gratitude, resilience. Pierre, ever analytical, subconsciously begins asking himself why these people are so emotionally invested. What gives this ritual such gravity? He glances at his family. Isabel is entranced by the choir's harmonies, while Amelie watches the dancers preparing for the offertory procession. Luke, usually aloof, appears contemplative. When the priest delivers a homily about the essence of community, how faith binds people even through poverty and struggle, Pierre feels an uncomfortable tightening in his chest. Still, he insists to himself that this is nothing more than tiredness. As the final hymn echoes, he claps politely, yet something has shifted. After the Mass, the Leclercs join Joel's family for breakfast at a nearby stall. The steam from bibingka fills the air, and the sweet aroma softens Pierre's guarded demeanor. Joel's mother eagerly asks what they thought of the celebration. Isabel praises the beauty of the music, and the children excitedly recount their favorite moments. When the question reaches Pierre, he hesitates. He admits the choir was impressive, though overly dramatized. Joel laughs gently, explaining that Filipinos express faith through emotion, song, and symbolism. Pierre nods, pretending to understand, though confusion brews within him. On the ride back, he replays scenes from the Mass in his mind, unable to shake the sincerity he witnessed. At the hotel, instead of checking emails, he sits silently on the bed, staring at the parole Joel gifted them. Its warm glow fills the room with gentle light. For the first time since arriving in Manila, Pierre feels himself slowing down, observing rather than resisting. That evening, as the family strolls through a crowded night market, they encounter a street choir performing traditional carols. The singers range from children to elders, yet their harmonies blend seamlessly. People gather around, some offering donations, others simply listening. When the choir shifts into a solemn ode dedicated to OFWs spending Christmas away from home, several listeners wipe away tears. Isabel's eyes glisten, moved by the raw emotion. Pierre watches closely, struck by how openly people express their hearts. In France, such vulnerability is rare, especially in public. Suddenly, a young girl approaches Amélie and offers her a handmade lantern. When Pierre tries to pay, the girl refuses, insisting it is a gift for Christmas. He stands frozen, unsure how to respond. The simple generosity unsettles him. On their way back, Pierre confesses to Isabel that he feels as though the city is speaking to him. But he doesn't yet understand the message. She smiles knowingly, realizing his transformation has begun. The next morning, Pierre arrives at work with a noticeably softer demeanor. He listens more than he speaks, allowing staff members to explain the cultural and logistical factors behind the delays. Instead of chastising them, he asks questions and proposes collaborative solutions. His team looks at him in mild shock. By afternoon, they make substantial progress, and Pierre feels oddly lighter, though he cannot attribute the shift to anything logical. Meanwhile, Isabel takes the children to Intramuros, where a guide recounts the Philippines' complex colonial history. The children listen intently as he explains how Filipino Catholicism evolved into something uniquely communal and emotionally expressive. When they reunite with Pierre for dinner, they discuss their discoveries, and Pierre finds himself genuinely curious rather than dismissive. Later that night, Isabel suggests attending another Simbang Gabby, Massachusetts. Pierre does not protest this time. Instead, he agrees quietly, claiming it might help him better understand local perspectives. But deep down, he senses something drawing him back. The second Mass they attend is even more crowded. This time, the Leclercs stand outside the church near a cluster of families holding candles. The moment the choir begins, Pierre feels a subtle shift in the atmosphere, a familiarity, almost like returning to a place he didn't know he missed. A young man introduces himself and shares that he attends every year to honor his late sister. His voice cracks as he explains how she believed Christmas was a time of healing. Pierre listens, unexpectedly moved. When the music transitions into the Gloria, the congregation erupts in joyous applause. Children wave star lanterns, elders smile through tears, strangers embrace. Pierre watches in astonishment. This outpouring of emotion, far from chaotic, feels deeply human, anchored in shared identity and hope. For the first time, he does not attempt to analyze it. He simply observes, quietly absorbing the warmth surrounding him. Something in him, long dormant, responds. As the Mass concludes, a sudden downpour drenches everyone outside. Instead of scattering, the crowd bursts into laughter, using jackets and newspapers as makeshift umbrellas. Families huddle together, protecting their candles from the rain. Joel's mother, despite her frail frame, extends her shawl to shield the children. Pierre watches in disbelief. Back home, rain tends to bring frustration and complaints. Here, it becomes an opportunity for connection. A group of teenagers begins singing Christmas carols loudly under the rain, drawing cheers. Amélie and Luc join them, their voices blending with strangers. Pierre feels an unexpected swell of pride watching his children immerse themselves so naturally in this environment. When a drenched priest playfully blesses the crowd with holy water mixed with rain, Everyone bursts into laughter again. Pierre finds himself laughing too, genuinely freely. Later, as they walk home soaked but smiling, Isabel tells him she hasn't seen him this light-hearted in years. The following week, Pierre's work responsibilities intensify. He spends long hours addressing financial gaps and negotiating with suppliers. But unlike before, he feels grounded. He greets employees, shares meals with them, and listens to stories of their families and sacrifices. His staff begins working with renewed energy, inspired by his sudden humility. One afternoon, an accountant named Mila reveals that she attends Simbang Gabby every year to pray for her children, who live abroad as caregivers. She explains how difficult it is for Filipino families to be separated by economic necessity, yet faith holds them together. Pierre is moved, recalling his earlier mockery of the Massachusetts. When he returns to the hotel, Isabel notices the exhaustion in his eyes but also an inner calm. He tells her that the Philippines is teaching him something he never expected. That resilience is not built through discipline alone, but through community, vulnerability, and hope. As Christmas approaches, Manila becomes even more vibrant. Streets glow with lanterns, fireworks burst in the sky, and music fills every public space. Pierre, once overwhelmed by the sensory overload, now finds comfort in it. The children beg to visit a charity event where volunteers distribute food to families living in informal settlements. Isabel agrees, and Pierre reluctantly joins. Upon arrival, they witness hundreds of families lining up patiently. Volunteers hand out meals, toys, and basic necessities. Pierre is struck by how donors and recipients interact with mutual respect. No condescension, only human connection. At one point, a boy about Luke's age approaches Pierre and thanks him simply for being there. Pierre is taken aback. He hadn't contributed anything significant, yet the sincerity in the boy's eyes makes him feel responsible. On the ride home, Pierre sits silently, wrestling with emotions he cannot articulate. Isabel gently rests her hand on his, understanding without word. The ninth and final night of Simbang Gabby arrives, and the Leclercs decide to attend once more, this time by choice, not obligation. The church is adorned with fresh flowers and vibrant lanterns. Anticipation hangs thick in the air. As the Mass begins, Pierre feels an overwhelming sense of belonging, surprising even himself. The choir performs a song in Filipino, and though he cannot understand the words, he recognizes the emotion. Longing, gratitude, surrender. When the priest invites the congregation to reflect on their blessings, Pierre unexpectedly feels tears prick his eyes. He turns away, embarrassed, yet unable to stop the surge of emotion. Memories flood him, moments of stress, detachment from his family, the numbness he had mistaken for strength. Isabel notices his trembling shoulders and gently places her hand over his. In that moment, Pierre understands what he had dismissed all along. The Mass is not about spectacle. It is about presence, humility, and shared humanity. After the Mass, the Leclercs walk to a park illuminated by hundreds of paroles hanging from the trees. Families gather to celebrate the end of Simbang Gabby, sharing food and stories. Pierre is invited by Joel's uncle to join a group of men roasting lechon. Despite the language barrier, they laugh, exchange gestures, and offer him the first crisp slice. Pierre feels welcomed in a way he never expected. Meanwhile, the children play traditional Filipino games with new friends. Isabel watches lovingly, grateful for the transformation unfolding within her family. As they sit together on a bench, Pierre admits he was wrong about Filipino Christmas traditions. He marvels at how joy persists even in hardship. Isabel tells him that humility is the beginning of understanding. Pierre nods slowly, realizing how far he has come from the man who once mocked something he didn't understand. Christmas Eve arrives, and Pierre's company hosts a gathering for its employees and their families. The evening begins with corporate speeches, but quickly transitions into cultural performances. Folk dances, choral numbers, and heartwarming testimonies. When Mila, the accountant, dedicates a song to her children working abroad, her voice trembles with longing. Pierre watches her closely, recognizing the emotional depth he once disregarded. After the performance, he approaches her to express his admiration. Mila smiles warmly, saying she hopes he now understands why faith means so much to Filipinos. Pierre nods sincerely. Later, during dinner, he notices his staff interacting with him casually, no longer intimidated. He feels human again, not a distant executive, but part of a community. Isabel squeezes his hand, proud of his growth. The night ends with fireworks, and there, under the shimmering lights, Pierre realizes he is experiencing Christmas in its purest form. On Christmas morning, the Leclercs join Joel's family for their traditional Noce Buena celebration. The table overflows with Filipino dishes: adobo, pancit, hamonado, lumpia, and leche flan. Pierre, who once avoided unfamiliar foods, eagerly tries each dish, delighting in the flavors. During the meal, Joel's mother shares stories of past Christmases. Typhoons that destroyed their home, financial hardships, and loved ones lost. Yet through every trial, the family remained steadfast, finding strength in their faith and each other. Pierre listens with deep respect, realizing how privileged his own life has been and how unaware he was of such resilience. After dinner, the families exchange simple gifts. Joel's mother presents the Leclercs with a handcrafted parole, telling them it symbolizes light during times of doubt. Pierre accepts it with tears in his eyes, deeply moved by the gesture. That night, he lies awake, reflecting on the transformation taking place within him. As the new year approaches, Pierre notices significant improvements in the company. His staff works more efficiently, but more importantly, with renewed morale. They feel seen and heard. During a strategy meeting, Pierre commends their dedication, surprising everyone. He also announces a new policy that ensures subcontractors are paid fairly and on time, a decision inspired by the values he has observed in the community. His team responds with gratitude. Outside the office, Pierre becomes more present with his family. He explores Manila with them, appreciating the city's raw beauty, its chaos, kindness, and contrasts. One afternoon, while watching a street vendor craft a lantern, he admits to Isabel that the Philippines has taught him something no corporate manual ever could: to value connection over control, empathy over efficiency. Isabel smiles, saying she always believed he had this softness in him. He had simply forgotten As their final week in the Philippines begins, the Leclercs visit a rural village where the company funds several community projects. Pierre meets farmers who rely on seasonal income and parents working multiple jobs to provide education for their children. Despite hardships, they radiate hope and gratitude. A local school principal explains that Filipino Christmas traditions persist even in remote villages because they offer strength during adversity. Pierre listens intently, humbled by the people's resilience. During a simple gathering under a nipa hut, villagers perform carols, their voices sincere and warm. Pierre is unexpectedly moved again, realizing that faith here is not ritualistic performance. It is survival. It binds people through storms both literal and emotional. He looks around at his family, who are immersed in conversations with villagers, and feels something profound: belonging. For the first time in years, Pierre feels whole. Back in Manila, the family prepares for their return to France. Amelie begs to attend one last Mass, and Pierre agrees willingly. This time, the Mass feels different, not because the ritual changed, but because he did. He sings along gently, even if he doesn't know the language. When the priest invites the congregation to share a moment of intention, Pierre closes his eyes and reflects on the man he had been: impatient, dismissive, disconnected. He silently prays, not for success or stability, but for wisdom, humility, and gratitude. When he opens his eyes, Isabel smiles softly, sensing the shift. After the Mass, Pierre approaches the priest to thank him for welcoming foreigners so warmly. The priest replies that Christmas is for everyone who seeks light, regardless of where they come from. Pierre feels the weight of those words settle deeply within his heart. Their final evening in the city is spent with Joel's family. Children run around with sparklers, elders exchange stories, and neighbors gather to share food. The atmosphere feels intimate and genuine. Pierre looks around, marveling at how deeply he has connected with people he met only weeks ago. He confides in Joel that he once mocked Filipino Christmas traditions. Joel laughs kindly, saying many foreigners do at first, but experiencing it firsthand changes everything. Pierre nods. He now understands the emotional depth, the communal resilience, the unwavering hope that shapes these celebrations. Before leaving, Joel's mother hugs him tightly and tells him he now carries a piece of Filipino Christmas in his heart. To Pierre's surprise, he feels tears welling again. He doesn't hold them back this time. As the family boards their flight home, Pierre gazes through the window at the Manila skyline glowing beneath the sunrise. He feels a pang of sadness, a longing he can't fully articulate. Isabel watches him quietly, recognizing the transformation. During the flight, Pierre writes notes for a report he must present to headquarters, but his mind drifts repeatedly to the people he met, the songs he heard, the emotions he felt. He realizes that the Philippines didn't just teach him about culture, it taught him about himself. Meanwhile, the children excitedly share what they will tell their classmates. The food, the lanterns, the friendships, the masses. Pierre listens, grateful that his children experienced something capable of shaping their worldview so profoundly. For once, he feels no urge to control the conversation, only to cherish it. Upon returning to Lyon, Pierre notices the stark contrast in atmosphere. The cold winter streets feel quiet, distant, almost empty despite the Christmas decorations. As the family settles back into routine, Pierre struggles to adjust. At work, his colleagues immediately notice the change in him. He is calmer, more patient, more collaborative. During a leadership meeting, he speaks passionately about adopting a more people-centered approach, something unheard of from him before. His colleagues exchange surprised glances. Later that week, he receives a message from Joel's family, sending photos of their Christmas celebrations. Pierre smiles, showing the pictures to Isabel and the children. The parole they received from Joel's mother now hangs proudly in their living room. Its warm glow reminds Pierre of Manila nights, laughter under the rain, and a community that embraced them without hesitation. One Sunday morning, while walking through the city center, Pierre hears a choir practicing inside a small local church. The melody carries faint echoes of the hymns he heard in Manila. Without thinking, he steps inside. The sunlight streams through stained glass windows, illuminating the choir as they rehearse. They sing with precision, but lack the emotional warmth he grew to appreciate. Still, Pierre feels comforted. A priest approaches him, offering a polite greeting, and Pierre asks, almost instinctively, whether the church organizes any multicultural Christmas events. The priest seems delighted by the question and invites Pierre to contribute ideas. Pierre agrees. When he exits the church, Isabel is waiting outside with a knowing smile. She says he no longer views faith through skepticism, but through understanding. Pierre nods, acknowledging the truth. As weeks pass, Pierre begins incorporating Filipino values into his daily life. Gratitude, patience, generosity. He teaches his children how to make simple paroles, and they decorate their home with them. One evening, Luke tells him that he likes the new dad. The one who laughs more listens more. Pierre is deeply moved. At work, he mentors younger employees, offering support rather than criticism. His CEO notices the shift and praises him privately, saying the company benefits greatly from his new leadership style. Pierre credits the Philippines for his transformation. In his free time, he begins researching Filipino history, culture, and traditions, hoping to maintain a connection with the place that changed him. The more he reads, the more he realizes how superficial his prior understanding had been. He resolves never to judge another culture without embracing humility first. On Christmas Eve the following year, the Leclerc family hosts a small gathering at their home. Friends and neighbors arrive carrying food, wine, and gifts. Isabel prepares French classics, but she also includes Filipino dishes she learned from Joel's family. The children proudly hang paroles around the living room. As guests admire them, Pierre recounts their origin story, speaking with affection and reverence. During the meal, he shares how the Simbang Gabby Mass transformed his understanding of Christmas. Not as a holiday defined by tradition alone, but as a celebration of shared humanity. His guests listen intently, moved by his sincerity. Later, the family streams a Filipino choir performance online. As the final hymn plays, Pierre closes his eyes, transported once again to the church in Manila, to the warmth of candlelight and the sound of voices rising in unison. In the months that follow, Pierre maintains close contact with Joel's family. They exchange messages, photos, and stories about their daily lives. Pierre sponsors the education of Joel's niece, a gesture inspired by the generosity he experienced in the Philippines. Meanwhile, Isabel volunteers at a multicultural center, teaching music to immigrant children. The Leclerc family becomes known for its warmth and openness, traits they credit to their time abroad. Pierre often reflects on how a journey he initially resisted became one of the most meaningful experiences of his life. He now understands that transformation requires vulnerability and that humility opens doors to profound insight. He shares this message frequently, especially with colleagues who struggle with cultural differences. Little by little, his newfound perspective begins influencing his community. 2 years later, the family returns to the Philippines for a vacation. When they land in Manila, Pierre feels an overwhelming sense of homecoming. Joel's family greets them with open arms and teary eyes. During their visit, Pierre joins a Simbang Gabby Mass once again. This time, he does not stand as an observer but as a participant. He sings, prays, and allows himself to feel fully present. When the choir performs the same solemn hymn that had first stirred him years before, Pierre feels tears streaming freely down his face. Unlike before, he does not hide them. Isabel holds his hand, proud of the man he has become. After the Mass, Joel's mother embraces him and says, "Now you understand." Pierre nods, whispering, "Yes, I finally do." In the documentary's closing scene, Pierre narrates the lesson he learned. He speaks calmly, his voice rich with emotion. He admits he once laughed at something he did not understand, mistaking sincerity for exaggeration, mistaking emotion for weakness. But the Philippines taught him otherwise. He reflects on the power of community, the strength of faith, and the beauty of traditions that survive hardship. The camera cuts to images of Filipino families celebrating Christmas, lanterns glowing like stars. Pierre concludes that true understanding requires openness, humility, and willingness to be transformed. The screen fades to black as the choir's voices echo softly. The message is clear. Sometimes the things we mock are the things we need most. And in the warmth of a Filipino Christmas Mass, Pierre Leclerc found a light he never knew he was searching for.